good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another installment of Flyer Gonna Flyer, our 41st episode. Officially, whoa, what the heck just happened there?
You go.
Oops, mistake by me.
Teleported mid-speech.
I hit the wrong button, man, so I'm sorry.
Wow.
Sometimes it happens like that.
Just completely screwing up my opening speech. Anyway, back on target. Our 41st installment of Flyer Gonna Flyer. We are officially in our summer schedule. As I announced 2 weeks ago, we are going to be doing this on an every other week basis during the summer, at least up until free agency starting time, I think. And then from there, we're going to kind of even make it a little bit more lighter until the season starts in September, and that's when we'll pick up our regular season schedule again. But anyway, we got a good episode for you today. With me are my two gracious co-hosts. Let's start with the man to my left. You know him, you love him. He is the seasoned veteran, Mr. Jamey Bascow. Jamey.
Hey, y'all. Aloha, mahalo. I'm having a good hair day today, so this is going to be a good show.
Just the hair? Man, you look tan. How's the beach doing?
Taking advantage of the beaches, anywhere from 50 to 70 degrees is very hot. That means it's beach time, baby. The ocean water temperatures, 47, a crisp 47. But that doesn't slow anybody down, especially my kids. They're out there boogie boarding and everything, 47 degree,
If you told 50 degrees is considered warm to any of our southern followers, they would probably have a stroke on sight. So you might want to watch specifically.
Well, you have to understand, Eric is still digging out from all that snow. Probably got about 30 inches on the ground still. So,
Hey, we're down to about 20 now. We're getting close there.
We're still living in the igloos. Didn't you know that? Up in Canada. Still got the igloos, and that's how we live in the winter.
Constant snowball fights all the time. That's it.
All the time.
Got some preserved for when the July 60-degree days hit and shocked the world. But anyway, the man below me, my other awesome co-host, Mr. Eric Martino. Eric, how you doing today, brother?
Not too bad, boys. I'm watching a little hockey here and there. Unfortunately, our Flyers are not in it, but sometime soon, right, boys? Sometime soon. A couple years.
Hopefully, it's been 5 years since we've made it. Sheesh, we haven't been in the playoffs since the bubble.
Next year, we're taking Montreal's spot.
Oh.
No, I agree. I agree.
We're getting spicy over here.
I agree. I agree.
Should be pushing, but we'll see whose spot they take. But
Montreal.
This has been an interesting playoffs. Dallas and the Stars and Avalanche tonight, as we're recording this, are about to have a big Game 7. And then tomorrow night, the Jets and Blues, which has probably been the most underrated series of the whole playoffs, will also be going to their 7th game. It's funny.
Jim Montgomery. That's all you got to say. It's Jim Montgomery.
Yeah, I'm shocked he did not get named as a Jack Adams.
I am shocked that, if the Flyers are going to make a coaching change, I'm surprised they didn't then.
You're going to make a comment about St. Louis getting the Jack Adams nomination? No?
No.
He earned it. I think he earned it. I honestly
don't think so.
Probably given it to him, Carberry, and I would have. See, the thing is, do you rip a Jack Adams nomination from the guy who won the President's Trophy in Winnipeg? So
no. I think it was a fair 3-1. Anyway, just had to stick my nose in.
Anyway, so let's move on here. Speaking of head coaches, the Philadelphia Flyers are still without one, but there's been some news leaks about what could be potentially happening in the upcoming weeks. So there's been reports that the top guy, per Elliot Freeman on the 32 podcast, has been widely rumored over the last few weeks that Rick Tocchet seems like the name that has been mentioned the most surrounding the Philadelphia Flyers. There has been mixed reviews on Tocchet on social media. I've seen a lot of individuals tell me that they don't want him. I'm kind of included in that bunch as well, but I can see why some people wouldn't like him. I think Charlie O'Connor is big on him. Kevin Kurz is big on him as well. The analysts are a little more in favor of Tocchet versus the Flyers fan base. So Let's start with you, Jamey. What's your perception on Tocchet? Is he someone that you would want the Flyers to go after, or would you like them to look in other directions?
I agree with the Flyers fan base. I stay away as far as I can from a coach like Rick Tocchet. Has nothing to take away from what he did during his tenure in Philadelphia. Has nothing to do with that. It's also nothing to do with him not necessarily being a good coach, but they moved on from John Tortorella. He's like a John Tortorella 2.0. And maybe not as abrasive as Torts, in terms, especially with the media. You're going to get good answers from Tocchet. He's going to be respectful that way, but he is a Torts 2.0 to the players. I mean, so they moved on from John Tortorella. Why would you bring another John Tortorella-esque inside of here? And also, with that being said, they made the playoffs with the Coyotes, but that was during the bubble. So there was only 35 games, played. Would he made it with the Coyotes?
Like 68, 69, 70, something like that.
Was it? I thought it was 35, to be honest. But I could be wrong. But nonetheless, would he have made the playoffs with the Coyotes during a full season? Then he goes to Vancouver, very successful, during his his first year. Unfortunately, his second year, look what's happened. I mean, look at Elias, look at the mess that has been created with a good Vancouver team. Quinn Hughes is a mess, in terms of that structure. Elias, Peterson's a mess. Then they go to trade. They had Brock Boser. Yeah, I mean, the team was loaded. The team was loaded from top to bottom. And for some reason, the team just underperformed this year. I mean, they had a lot of good talent there. They broke up a lot of their talent, traded a lot of their talent. I know Demko was hurt. I get that. Losing your star netminder for a period of time is hard for any team to overcome. But if it was any team to overcome, it would have been, Vancouver. So I'm not a big. I just don't think it's the right time to hire Rick Tocchet, and I think that it's good to hear his name because the Flyers usually do stuff under this regime that isn't in the media. Does that make sense? So, like, they don't have much information leaks. Usually, when the leaks are there, it's usually to steer in another direction. So, just like everyone thought Ryan Leonard was going to be a Philadelphia Flyer. If you talk to the majority of the fan base, they had Leonard coming to Philly. If you talk to the majority of the main, beats, for the Flyers, Ryan Leonard was a Philadelphia Flyer before the draft even began. So I mean, it's stuff like that. They usually throw those, names out there to steer in a different direction. So I don't know. I like Bershwin. There's a lot of history there. Keith Jones, knows him well, obviously, because of the Western Michigan program, and there's no doubt, even with Keith Jones not attending, that university or not having affiliation with Western Michigan, they know Western Michigan very well because Alex Bump played for Western Michigan. Wade Allison played for, Western Michigan. So a lot of the organization knows Western Michigan. And with that, Danny Briere was under, the Fletcher era. They're handling, some matters and stuff. So he knows Western Michigan. There's a name that isn't floated around that I'd like to see, and that's Dale Hunter. Dale Hunter with the London Knights. I'd love, he'd be one off board that's not even talked about. You know what I mean? Is he interested in, the Flyers head coaching position? David Carl is another from the University of Denver. He was hot, for a while. Then the Rangers were hot on him. Is he inclined to come to the NHL? That's yet to be, of actual yes. No one knows. Maybe the Flyers are appealing to him, and the Flyers are doing stuff on the DL here that no one knows about. Mm-hmm. Mike Sullivan, was there for the grabbing, and due to what happened with John Tortorella, I think that fizzled. But but I don't know. I would steer away from Rick Tocchet.
You make a lot of good points there, Jamey, especially in terms of just when I look at Tocchet, the John Tortorella 2.0 persona does kind of come out, even if he's a little more soft-spoken to the media. The thing that scares me personally the most when it comes to Tocchet isn't even the way things transpired this entirety of the year in Vancouver, but how things happened between him and his star, Elias Person. It's no secret to anyone, Pedersen and JT Miller had their beefing, had their vocal issues with one another. JT Miller inevitably got traded to the New York Rangers in, what was it, like February? And they expected Pedersen to step up, and Pedersen kind of had such a lousy year this year after signing that massive contract extension. And then he kind of said some stuff in the media that came out as a little odd when it came to the connection with him and Elias Person. I worry about, God forbid, if he were to come here, the connection of him and like Matvei Michkov or Travis Konecny. There was one report from the CanucksDaily.com. I noticed this here. They talked about issues he had back in February and what he was struggling with. And he kind of went on with Pedersen's inability to like move his feet and his double clutching and kind of calling out his confidence too. And it's like, I wouldn't want to do that to my star and open, like, out in the public. That's something I'd like to keep in confined closed doors a little more. Like, I know Tortorella did that, but not to the extent of like bashing his game. It would be more of a team effort, and he wouldn't come out and individually single a player. You would have saw the media all the time try to, pull some information out of him, and Tortorella go, I'm not getting into that. That's between me and player X. We're not going down that lane. And that was a consistency with Tortorella. With Tocchet, I don't want there to potentially be seeds of doubt that grow in some of the star players based off of some of the things that he potentially spews to the media. And that kind of scares me, especially if he makes a player try to become what they aren't. Elias Person is a two-way offensive dynamic player, and you're kind of having him try to be a little bit of a player that he's not, and bashing his confidence too. So I look at that with Tocchet that scares me is just the sheer fact that does he know each and every one of his players and what they succeed in versus what they struggle in? And then there's other things too. Tocchet just doesn't seem like the coach that you want to potentially have if you're ready to grow from within and have a coach for the long term. I would personally rather prefer them to go down the college route. Bershwin is a great name that was brought up, as you just mentioned, Jamey. Just won the NCAA championship out in Western Michigan. Seems like a guy that connects well with Jonesy, too. I think they have some pass together. And I know Tocchet is a former Flyer, but I'd rather stay away from the former Flyers brass if we can. I know I just mentioned Bershwin and Jonesy having a connection in the same breath, but it's not quite as deep as what it was with Tocchet, I guess is a better way to put that. But at least with Bershwin, he's a guy that has got some level of NHL experience. He's a guy that kind of will command respect, but at the same time be lenient to the point where he can get players to really play hard for him and at the same time be understanding as well. He's never had an NHL head coaching gig. And one thing me and Eric were talking about off screen, Eric made a great point on this. A young guy like that, you can kind of find the middle grounds of when it comes to finding a head, like some assistance with. Eric brought this up to me off screen. Maybe one guy, you end up keeping one of your assistant coaches, a.k.a. Brad Shaw, and give him the opportunity to find maybe a forwards offensive power play coach that he could select that he feels like that would be a better fit for this team. So at the end of the day with Tocchet, I just don't see him being a good long-term fit. Either way, when this team is ready to compete, if they did hire him, I don't think he would be the coach that you would want leading this team to compete. Vancouver, did they get out of the first round last year? I can't remember. Did they get to
No, I think they were first round of done. I think. I could be wrong, but
no,
remember that?
Sure they beat Nashville.
Okay, they
did beat Nashville.
Tocchet's made the second round once, and that's it. And then this year, things fell off the rails again, and it just became a giant locker room mess. Not that it was all his fault, but as a head coach, you need some level of control with that. So I'd rather stay away from Tocchet. He just does not seem like the guy that would fit well with this team, especially such a young team that you want to build up with and maybe go down the college route. Eric, how about you? What's your opinion on this?
Well, look, as far as Rick Tocchet goes, look, Rick Tocchet for me is not my number one choice. But like, if you're asking me, like, would I be disappointed if he was hired? Like, honestly, no. I really wouldn't be that disappointed if he was hired. At the end of the day, like, look, he may not coach the way I would like to see, because apparently he coaches a lot of dump and chase. That's his style. He's a dump and chase. That's the system he likes to employ, and like, I'm not a huge fan of that. Like, it's kind of boring hockey.
It feels like Peter Laviolette hockey.
But then,
It
like,
works.
look, at the end of the day, like, if you look, if I'm looking strictly just at, like, let's say winning percentage, this year, like, look, his team didn't make the playoffs. It was a disaster. And again, like, I think I told you this before. I don't put what happened this year to Vancouver on Rick Tocchet's shoulders. I really don't. This has been something that's been brewing for a long time between JT Miller and Pedersen, that I think this year it just blew. Like, look, Miller, he left for personal reasons for, like, what, he was gone for like a month plus or something. So right there, like, you lose one of your best players for over a month, and look, just a lot of turmoil. And like I said, like, it's hard for me to put that squarely on the coach's shoulders. I think the biggest issue in Vancouver is actually management and ownership, and, like, so there's a reason why. Like, look, at the end of the day, again, like, his winning percentage this year, for which we would consider a bad year, the percentage was still a 549. Last year, yeah, they lost in the second round. He had a 665 winning percentage. The year before that, he coached the last 36 games. He had a 611 winning percentage. And the 2 years that he was in Arizona for 4 years, like, 2 of them were under 500. But look, the one that he didn't go to the playoffs, it was a 529 and a 524, excuse me, with those Arizona teams that his best seasons. And, like, look, I've said this before. Look, go actually online and look at the lineup that he had those years in Arizona.
Yeah, those Arizona teams were not good.
They had no business being. I know, like, it was a shortened season and everything, but they had no business being in the playoffs. The lineup was terrible. So yeah, but look, like I said, for me personally, he wouldn't be my first choice. I'd prefer them to go with a younger coach, someone who's more of a teacher, who could grow with someone who could grow with the team. And like I said, someone like Freshwater actually makes a lot of sense personally to me. Only for the fact that, one, he's been an assistant coach. Like, he's been an assistant coach in the league before, so he knows how to coach men. And look, he took I don't want to say a nothing program, but like an obscure program, I guess is maybe the best way to put it, that has never had success in this league before, and he's made them into a champion. And and one of his best players on that team was Alex Baum. So we got a little connection there. So but
first
no, yeah. So look, for me personally, like, I'd like the Flyers to go look a little bit more outside the box, look at different candidates. Someone that I actually put out not too long ago on Twitter, but like, for me, like someone like look at someone like Mark Savard. Like, Mark Savard, he's been an assistant in the league. He's coaching in the OHL as a head coach. Like, these are the guys I think that the Flyers should be interviewing, and like, because these are guys that could grow with the team. And look, in 2-3 years from now, if, let's say, like, when the team is ready to compete and you don't think that coach is the guy, then go get your guy. So yeah, so for me, that's it.
That's sort of where I'm at. It's like that's another point to not hire Rick Tocchet, is because, like, you want to rebuild. They're in a rebuild, obviously, right? So they're not finished. This isn't a finished rebuild yet. It's not complete. It's not even near completion. They don't even know what all-season additions they will. Now they might have a plan. Obviously, they have a plan, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a plan B, plan C either, in case plan A blows up. So obviously they know the direction that they're going to head into, to get more interest, to achieve more interest. to get those players, more talent on this team. A center, a goalie, or goalies, who knows? But what I think, like, this is bad timing for Rick Tocchet. Like, if they hired him, he comes in during the midst of a rebuild. Eric just made a great point, and I think that should be honed in on a little more. A younger coach could grow with this team. Bradshaw's been there. If they're going to go down that route, I'd rather just stay with Bradshaw because Bradshaw knows this team. It would make more sense for him. He's already grown with the players that are already here. Let's see what he can do more. If he doesn't get the job done in 2 years, give him a 2-year deal. If he doesn't get the job done in 2 years, then you move on from Bradshaw. Maybe try to keep him within the organization as an assistant, move him to a power play, or a penalty kill or something of that nature. See if he wants to do, that. It just makes more sense to not hire Rick Tocchet right now. It's just bad timing. And I think that even if Torts wasn't fired, it would have been bad timing for Mike Sullivan as well. The more that I think about this thing, because he would come in during the midst of a rebuild. The Rangers are already there. They just underachieved this year, right? So it's like the Vancouver Canucks. They're right there. Same thing. Vancouver, New York. So they already had the talent in place that they should make the playoffs. The Flyers don't. The Flyers, as it stands right now, are still a bubble to less than a playoff team, minus, because obviously we don't know what type of additions that the team is going to make or even be given to make. Just because they had the money to spend it doesn't mean they have to spend it. Oh, let's go out and spend because we got the money. No, if the talent isn't there and it's not going to push the Flyers forward, it doesn't make sense just to spend money, just to bring somebody in to keep the fan base happy. Might as well just hold on to that money and wait until the following year, to see what becomes available. That's where I'm at. That's just yet another reason not to hire Rick Tocchet or a seasoned NHL coach. The only NHL coach that I probably would have been okay with, and that was during midseason. That was when sort of the rails were falling off for Philadelphia at that time, right? Jim Montgomery, like that would have been, a great hire. I can't believe Boston just fired Jim Montgomery. That was the most baffling thing to me.
Wouldn't it be something if they potentially have 2 fired coaches that make the Stanley Cup Finals? Because they've already had one, Bruce Cassidy. Now, Montgomery is playing in a Game 7 tomorrow night.
I personally believe that Peter DeBoer. I think the Dallas Stars are going to make the finals. I know they're going to 7, but Peter DeBoer does not lose Game 7s. I think they're going to thrash the Colorado Avalanche, and I think they win like 5-2. To be honest with you, I think they're a little disappointed, in how they've played here past few games. This is pretty good playoffs, thus far. It's good entertainment. But Eric brought in a very good point. One point that I didn't even say, I wish I did, but I did not. So that's a great point. I think that needs to be talked about more is this rebuild. I don't think we're talking about it enough. You get a seasoned coach, that means you're ready. The Flyers are not ready. They're not ready to contend yet. We don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs next year. We think they will. You think that the Flyers are ready to make the playoffs. As Coots says, he wants to win in Philadelphia. Like the next step, Sean Couturier said as exit interview, or Travis Konechny did, for that matter. Sorry, I don't want to get the players misconstrued here. Coots wants to win in Philly. Konechny says next year they should make the playoffs. He was like, now, I'm not saying we're a contender. He said that. He's like, because we're nowhere near contention. That's 2 to 3 years away, he said.
And I respect that.
And that's why I think that Brad Shaw, like if Bershwin, really wants to come here, cool, I'm down with it. If David Carl wants to come here, cool, I'm down with it. If Dale Hunter wants to come, here, cool, I'm down with it. If Magnus Havlid, the under 18, Swedish coach, from this past year from the under 18, world, WJC tournament, if he wants to come here, I'm down with it. But getting a seasoned NHL coach like Rick Tocchet or somebody else, it's not the time for that right now. So that's where I'm at.
What's interesting the most about this whole coaching situation is just how the Flyers have been so quiet and keen about everything. That's the biggest thing when it comes to Flyers front office is they never let anything leak. Have you noticed that? It's interesting. You brought up Ryan Leonard 2 years ago when it's like that was the name it seemed like that kept getting leaked out that the Flyers would be pushing towards. And while they had meetings with Matvei Michkov, they didn't really keep it. A lot of this was kept under wraps. Like you knew they were having meetings with the guy, but you didn't know how in depth that Matvei was pushing actively to try and get drafted by Philadelphia. And even before that, like a lot of the moves that they made, no one heard this Frost and Farabee trade coming when it happened early last year. They've always been secluded and not letting anything leak out of this front office. And that's what I like about them. The Provorov trade, right when Danny took over, no one heard that trade coming at the time. That came out of nowhere. Like that's the one thing I love about this front office.
I do too.
Is they don't let anything leak.
Yeah.
Could this Rick Tocchet news just be another one of those examples where they're just trying to lead the media away elsewhere? I mean, I don't know what you gain from that, but I can understand it too that you don't want other teams to know your play. Oh, the Cutter Gauthier situation.
Yeah.
That shitstorm happened under wraps for a year. And no one friggin' knew anything about it until he was traded the night of. So I like that about it.
Yeah, smoke screens with coaches are big. You think about it. You want to be the first one to interview that head coach. You want to be the first one to make an impression on a young coach like Pat Ferschweiler, or something of that nature, for instance, because we know the only reason I mention him is because he's definitely been interviewed, as Frank Cervera, mentioned, and Kevin Weeks and everybody, all the big beats, main reporter said, like that. But you want to be the first one to interview. You don't want to be the second or third. You want to be the first. You want to give him, or her for that matter, your good play. Hey, this is what we're going to do here in Philly. This is our vision. Oh, wow, that sounds kind of cool. I'm used to that anyway because I'm doing that now. First impressions are big.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I just want them to do their due diligence and find a guy who is going to be a long-term coach. Because as you guys have mentioned, I don't think Rick Tocchet is that type of guy that you plan on having for 5-6+ years. He's a guy that seems like a bridge coach for, say, 2 years, 3 years, then you're right back in the same situation if you're trying to be ready to compete. Do you really want that in the next stages of a rebuild? That's me, Eric, and you, Jamey, mentioned. I'd rather them get a coach that they can build and grow with, gain flow and chemistry with, like a David Carl, like a Pat Ferschweiler. Guys like that who you have success. David Carl's won 2 friggin' NCAA championships now that we mentioned him too. Now, his name doesn't seem as realistic. I don't think he's going to end up grabbing a head coaching job this offseason because it sounds more like he wants to hone in with his family. But because he already turned down Chicago, and that sounded like a perfect fit for him. So with that being said, if he's off the table, I would like them to make a good push at Ferschweiler. Let me ask you this before we wrap up the coaching talk. If you guys could pick one guy. One last guy I want to mention before we do that, Jay Woodcroft. I think he got the short end of the stick at Edmonton. I think he would be an interesting coach to potentially grow with as well.
He'd be a good coach. Yeah.
I like Jay Woodcroft a lot. I wanted to mention him a little bit. He hadn't been mentioned at all. But Jay Woodcroft seems like a guy who could get the best out of this team offensively, too. He's a very strong offensive-minded coach. And that's what I think this team needs, is a coach who can drive this team offensively to unlock gears that they didn't have before. It'd be better for Matvei. It'd be better for Konechny. It'd be better for Forster. It'd be better for whoever they draft in this year's draft. Luchenko. A lot of the young guys that are going to be part of your core, that core forward group that are going to be sticking with this coach and can help advance them to another level. Because outside of Matvei and Konechny, they don't really have guys right now that seem like that can push that 70-plus point plateau. So we'll see there. But if you guys could pick one coach that they end up hiring inevitably, who would it be? Eric, I'll start with you.
Oh man, I don't know. I'm gonna say
my bad.
I'm gonna say Ferschweiler probably, because for all the reasons that I mentioned before. I think he fits the bill. He has pro experience. He can clearly take a team to a championship that had no business going to a championship, probably. So yeah, no. If I had to pick one, it's probably him. Young enough, like I said, can grow with the team, and that's it. No, it has to be someone like him, or if not him, then it has to be like an assistant coach somewhere that we give, again, forward thinking, young, offensive minded. But the only thing that I don't want is a coach that's how do I say? I don't want a coach that's gonna be a pushover. You don't want a guy to be like
Yeah.
too like
Great.
the nice, because now you had Torts, you had like the bad guy.
Yeah.
You can't go the complete opposite direction. You can't, because then you risk losing the room. Then you risk having the players lose, not lose respect, but like walk all over the coach. He has
Yeah.
to be at least a teacher, but at the same time stern, like stern
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
that
yeah,
like he'll
Yeah.
garner respect, and he'll garner like the
Yeah.
make the players like accountable, basically.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
How about you, Jamey? Who would you pick?
I'm going to go off board here. I'm going to say Dale Hunter. He's a proven winner with the London Knights. He takes, and the reason I really like him and would like to see him in Philadelphia is because the Flyers have Mafi Michkov and Travis Konechny. Those are two stars. The biggest star, obviously, is Mafi with a bigger, more of a ceiling than TK. I think that you're going to need a coach like Dale Hunter that knows how to win with stars, knows how to get his stars to the next level. Look what he does with the London Knights. He has experience with coaching in the NHL with the Caps. For instance, prior. But he knows how to get these young players to the next level. And I think that's how I envision Philadelphia here. They got a lot of good young nucleus here, a lot of good young players. Yeah, your Nicolas Lauriers are going to fall off. Your Ryan Palings maybe might fall off. They might re-sign him, after next season, for depth purposes. But you're going to get all these young guys. Alex Bump coming in, Denver Barkey's coming in, Jet Luchenko coming in, whoever the Flyers select in this draft, come in. They have their young defenseman, Ethan Sampson, doesn't get talked about enough. He doesn't even get talked about enough through anybody. I have no idea why. He's put forth a really, really good year for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. He's a stern, defenseman back there. He had one of his best seasons, back there. So you might have him, coming forth. Jennings have come forth. Helge Grans. All these young players are needed. Nikita Grebekin. I didn't even talk about yet. You're going to have all these young players coming forth. You're going to need them to gel with the current vets and also push the young players to the next level, get them acclimated, push them to that, and that includes vets. I think Coots has found his niche. He looks energized and ready, for next season already, playing on the line with Mafi Michkov and Travis Konechny. I think Dale Hunter could come in here and really do some things. And then after 2 or 3 years, if things didn't work out with Dale, then you move on. You didn't really lose too much because you're not in contention for a rebuild yet. That's where I'm getting at. So if you hired a young coach like, off the grid, like Dale Hunter or David Carl or Pat Ferschweiler, you don't really lose too much. You're actually gaining to see maybe if this coach is good enough to take the guys to the next level.
Good points made, Jamey. Dale Hunter would be an interesting coaching option. I'm going to kind of piggyback off Eric. I think Pat Ferschweiler would be my pick now as well, especially now that David Carl kind of looks like he's out of the picture. But for a lot of the points Eric made, pretty accurate to what I think. He brought an organization that really had no business winning it all. The connection with Alex Bump. So you already got a player that has some level of familiarity with him that can probably praise for him quite a bit. The connection he has with Keith Jones is always something to look at too. And he seems like a guy that will get instant respect. That's something I've heard a lot from some analysts too, is he's got NHL experience as an assistant. So he's already garnered some level of respect. And not only that, you've got a guy that you're not giving too much power to, and that is a young guy that can grow with the team. So long story short on that, Ferschweiler is my guy. I would probably like them to pick him before anyone. There are other choices I'd like too. Woodcroft would be maybe second. And I guess if I had a third, I think it would be bringing back Bradshaw. But anything else you guys want to add on coaches before we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, I just want to say Pat Ferschweiler, he was the assistant for the Detroit Red Wings. For all the viewers that are wondering who and what, like where his NHL experience came from.
Yeah.
And he was head coach of Grand Rapids also for one season.
Yes, I remember the Grand Rapids.
No, I forgot about that, to be honest with you. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. And that's why, actually, just quick, like, that's why I think someone like him also makes a lot of sense, is because he can coach the vets just as well as he can coach the rookies and the young players.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have guys like next year, we might have, now, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but we might have guys like Luchenko, Bump, Grabankin, Andre, all these young guys in our starting lineup, maybe, you know? So you want a guy that knows how to coach young players as much as he knows how to coach veteran players.
Yeah.
And that's why a guy like Ferschweiler, for me, makes a lot of sense.
And as Eric just alluded to, that doesn't mean that all players make the opening day lineup, but at some point, he's absolutely correct. I envision each and every player that he just mentioned to be in the starting Flyers lineup at some point.
Yeah. Listen, as Eric just mentioned, there is a lot of youth that is going to be inserted into this team. I don't, like I said, I think maybe one or two of them will realistically start there. I think Bump has a real chance to push for a roster spot next year, and one of Luchenko or Grabankin. I don't think both will start here. I'm going to guess Luchenko and maybe Grabankin later in the year might find a way here. But I'm telling you right now, there's going to be some changes to this roster. So you're going to have to find a way to include.
Yeah, I think Owen Tippett gets traded. I'm calling that now.
Ooh, there's a bold print. We will get into some trade talks as we get closer to the draft for sure. Owen Tippett is a bold prediction. Might be that. We'll see. Anyway, speaking of players, oh boy, that would be crazy if Danny got into his. He's got a no movement clause, I think, in a year or two. So that would be interesting to move him now. But to another interesting thing that we want to talk about. So the NHL playoffs is in full swing. There's currently 10 teams left, but I want to include all 16 for this argument. If you had the ability to bring in one player, realistic target, so just for the bring this up to the fans, those guys, you can't do Connor McDavid, you can't do Nathan McKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, Cale Makar, whatever. Guys like that, unrealistic, we obviously know isn't happening. So if you could bring in one realistic player to bring onto this roster from the NHL playoffs this year, who would it be? Eric, let me start with you on that one.
I actually have two. I couldn't decide which one.
Let's hear them both then. Let's have some fun with it.
Okay. Okay. Well, my first one is somebody I actually mentioned last week. Okay. It's actually Mason Marchment. And he personally, I think he fills a couple needs that we desperately need. One, size at wing. The guy is 6'5", 212. Okay. Mm-hmm. And two, he's a left winger. We have no natural left wingers. We need somebody to play on the left side. So for me, he makes a lot of sense for the same reasons why I brought up last week. Is basically Dallas is in big time cap trouble next year. Next year. This offseason, they need to shed salary. And I'd mentioned again, like I mentioned last week, I thought him packaged with Bork could be coming to the Flyers for something. Who knows what? I don't know, but we'll see. My second one, and I'm only mentioning him because I don't know what the hell is going on in Los Angeles, what they're gonna do this offseason, and it just seems like for whatever reason he just wasn't fitting. But if I'm Danny, I'm calling and I'm seeing what's the situation with Brent Clark, because his name was out there a few times this season where like it was in rumor mills. His name came up in rumor mills, and I just 22-year-old right shot D, 6'2", 201. Like he put up 33 points this year. He had 2 points in the playoffs with limited time on ice. The guy went from playing 16 minutes on average in the season to playing like 11, 12 minutes a night for whatever reason in the playoffs. Like Jim Hiller just kept on shortening his bench. I just don't get it. But anyway, But yeah, for me, those are the two guys that I think I'd be eyeing this offseason that would realistically maybe be available.
Two interesting names there. And honestly, yeah, the Kings, it's very odd what's happening out in LA right now. It's kind of a recollection of exactly what happened on the ice over the last few games of that series. Jamey, how about you?
Gabe Velarde is one. I like him. I think he's an RFA, if I'm not mistaken, going in. I think the Flyers could personally go down the RFA route. Danny Briere mentioned it at the exit interview presser that he held, that they will consider the RFA route. Doesn't mean that they will. He's just saying that all avenues and angles will be considered. He did also say that they would have to overpay, for a player like, I'll use him as an example, Velarde. But I think that he would be good. And you know what? To piggyback off of to pony up for Dallas. Now, I don't know if he'd be available, but Jake Ottinger would be great. That would give the Flyers an actual number one here, move Erson to a backup role, make way for Ivan Fedotov, maybe waive him, send him to Lehigh, or something of that nature. I think that Ottinger would be a great addition, just because the Flyers would be with an established, number one netminder. Now, of course, I don't think he's going to be available, but hey, you never know. Wish is a wish. They're going to be in cap hell.
Could be. Speaking of cap hell, I got an interesting name to talk about as well. One team that we kind of mentioned on DPWM last week on episode 68. Give it a check out, by the way, if you haven't already. The Edmonton Oilers are in an absolute shitstorm with cap. And they need some money to sign Evan Bouchard. They got that Connor McDavid deal coming up. And the Flyers need some size on their D-core. One guy that comes to mind is Jake Wallman. 29 years old. He only has 1 year left on his contract. I think he's about 220 pounds. I think he's 6'1", 6'2". And ever since he got traded from Detroit for literal air, this guy has been a pretty productive defenseman. I think he's probably Edmonton's third best defenseman realistically on that roster, especially if Rasmus Ristolainen isn't going to be ready at the beginning of the year. And if for some reason you move on from a guy like, I don't know if it's going to happen, but if you move on from a guy like Cam York, or if they send Igor Zamula to Istanbul, which should hopefully will happen. No disrespect to the guy. I'm all set with that project. But point being, a guy like Wallman would be a good fit, especially for a team that like the Flyers that lacks size. He's a big body, and this team needs a little bit of size. He needs a little bit of snarl. And it's not that much of a risk either. If you feel like he works out, cool, you can extend him. He's only 29 years old. And number two, if he doesn't work out, you can flip him for assets at the deadline. So that's a guy I would really keep an eye on, is Jake Wallman, especially Edmonton, who is in a shitstorm that is going to need to upgrade the goaltending, that's going to need to re-sign Evan Bouchard, that's going to eventually have to pay Connor McDavid. And they have about $8 billion no movement clauses, so they can't really do anything else outside of move some secondary pieces. And he could be one of the guys that could be a casualty of that. But
yeah. I mean, you make very good points. I mean, the Flyers do need a big-bodied defenseman back there. They're hoping Jennings is that or whatever with Jennings. So yeah, I mean, Jennings would be a good replacement for Igor Zamula. But yeah, I mean, I can see Bouchard.
No, Wallman.
I mean, Wallman shoots. Sorry.
Bouchard, I'd love to. That would be a great top pairing guy suddenly. You'd pry him from Edmonton. That would be...
Oh, man. Alex, I thought you were actually going somewhere completely different. I thought you were going to say Evander Kane, which honestly, you know what? I was just looking right now. 1 year, $5.125 million for 1 year. And maybe they might have to pay us to take that contract because, like you said, they're in cap hell. So it wouldn't even be a bad guy to have.
He's got size. He still has plenty left in the tank. There's two issues with Evander Kane for me. Number one, they already have a giant log jam at wing, so you definitely have to move someone. And number two, is he completely past his off the ice issues? That's the only thing that worries me with him. There's been some off the ice crap with him before. Do you want to bring that in to a team like the Flyers, who've already had not that type of off the ice issues, but like just some PR issues just in general? If you can get Evander Kane and move another body out, I like the move because you're adding size. He's got some snarl. He's got a lot of playoff experience. It's not much risk because he's only got, I think, 1 year left on his contract.
Just next year. That's it.
Yeah. So I would be fine with that if you can move a contract beforehand.
I think Danny, everything is open. You know what I mean? And I would take a stab at that, to be honest with you. I said that when he was available, 2 years ago at the trade deadline. I would have, liked Evander Kane, even with, some of the issues. It depends on the team. If he grooms with that team and he gels, with the players in the locker room, you'd be surprised on some of these guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but the Flyers, they're in it. They're in it. No risk. You got 1 year left.
That's fair. I mean, look at Pierre-Edouard Dubois out in Washington. This guy was being talked at as both Columbus and LA. He suddenly goes to Washington. You haven't heard a peep from him, and he's suddenly being productive there. So, and that was a guy I was critical about before the year began.
Yeah.
So you make a great point with that, Jamey. Especially with all the term he has, that's a 3 ton bigger of a risk than a guy like Evander Kane too. So Evander Kane. Just again, you got to move someone before you do it because you worry about the logjam. Another name that would be interesting if you want to go the Kings route is a Warren Fogle. He's only got, I think, 1 or 2 years left. It's a center, which is something this team needs. That's a guy to be interested in. He had some depth scoring. So if you can't get a significant top 6 guy, maybe that's a guy you consider going after. But any other names you guys have in mind before we wrap things up?
Honorable mention, I guess. I don't know if he'd even be available, but it's a guy I've always liked from Ottawa is Ridley Gregg. Always been a Ridley Gregg fan, and he just screams Flyers to me. He's such a dick on the ice, and it's I don't know. I really like Ridley Gregg, and if we could somehow pry him from Ottawa, which again I don't think, just because he just fits really well there. But Ridley Gregg's a guy I would
never
see if he's available.
You never know.
Let's go crazy and offer sheet Matthew Nines out in Toronto.
No, don't go crazy. That might be a freaking possibility. That's a real possibility there. Because Toronto is definitely against the cap, but Ridley Gregg is that.
Because if they re-sign Marner, someone's going.
Yeah, Ridley Gregg's a good name, and that's because his dad is a scout for the Flyers anyway. So there's familiarity with the organization here. Gregg, I think, would be willing to come to Philadelphia. To be closer. Maybe not closer because his dad's going to be on the road, but at least be in the same organization, same umbrella as his dad anyway.
Ridley Gregg is definitely an interesting name for sure. All right. That's going to wrap things up for this week's episode, gentlemen. As usual, thank you all for tuning in. Jamey, thank you for coming on. Eric, thank you for coming on. Fantastic episode as always. We will see you guys again in 2 weeks. By that point, A, we'll know where the Flyers are picking. B, maybe we'll have a head coach by then. I think probably over a 50% chance they'll have their head coach hired at that point. If not, I would assume it would be very soon. And we'll be talking a little more draft stock as well. But that's going to do it this week. Everyone, thank you all for tuning in for our first off-season episode of this year. But as always, sit back, relax, and have a great summer. Let's go Flyers.